Hello and welcome to the Save the Punter Betting Show, the programme where we do the research for you so you don't have to. Every week we preview the biggest English football games and advise you of where we think there's value to be had to make your sports betting life a little easier. Welcome back, Pete. How's your week been betting wise? What's been the highlight?
Maybe the West Ham game from the podcast. That was a comfortable win. Should have been more than 1-0. They played well again. That was a good one.
We had them minus a quarter, so even though it was only a slight win, it's still a full payout for us. Ash, you backed that as well. Did you have a highlight of betting from the last week apart from that?
No, not really. It was a pretty quiet week last week. You get the slow periods, but it went along well. Tottenham done their job. Like I say, West Ham done their job. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah, you had 2 winners from 3 on the podcast last week, Ash. Leeds let you down against Arsenal. Pete, you also went with that one. So Pete, you had a winner and a loser. Ash, you had 2 from 3, and I was 0 from 2. So we made a slight loss on last week's podcast, but only a very slight loss. I think it was 1.94 points, which means the ROI is down at a lowly 31.41%. Probably the best Premier League ROI I've seen anywhere from 1x2 goals and Asian markets. We've challenged the Twitter at C to beat us, to join the spreadsheet. I think if we look at the spreadsheet, all 3 of us are in profit there, and our followers are struggling a little bit. But let's hope they can have a better week. We got the likes of Ill Advised and Napstar. Hopefully, we'll be posting some bets this week, as well as Bowers Co. But for us this week, let's get started with Friday night football. Crystal Palace host Newcastle. Now, I do like a Friday night game, not as much when we can't go out, but still. Carlos Sullivan has... Actually, no, he hasn't. It's probably the only game he hasn't asked us a question on. So, Pete, I understand you've got a bet in Crystal Palace versus Newcastle.
Yeah, I like Palace in this game. We've talked a lot about... We keep talking about Newcastle, how they don't look a good team. They pop up with these results. Against Chelsea last week, they were poor, and they're still showing 36% expected goal ratio, 27% shot on target ratio. So it shows they're really on the back foot in the games. And against Chelsea, it was crazy how deep they were at times. Even the commentators were mentioning it. Paris have been okay, 46% expected goals. They're doing well. I think maybe the odds have got carried away about Zaha not being in the team, which I think certainly this season isn't as much of an issue. They've got Eze, who looks a good player. Batshuayi is coming, who's going to score goals. I think Palace, this is a sort of game where they'll be able to control most of the game. Normally they're on the back foot, but I think they'll put a few into Newcastle here. I've gone with a minus 0.25, which you can get about 1.94 with Bet365, just in case, because I think the 0-0 is always in play in a Newcastle Palace. But I think Palace are the much better team, so I'm going for Palace.
Yeah, on your point about the 0-0 being in play, I make the draw a touch of value and Palace a bit of value too. So I'm inclined to agree with your bet. I personally prefer a low-scoring first half. I'm going to be back in 0-0 at half-time, which is 2.55.
It's not like you to be back in that, is it?
Yeah, 2.55 on BetVictor, and you can get 2.7 on the exchanges. There are low-scoring trends here. If you look at Palace's last 15 at home against the bottom 6, unders has landed 13 out of those 15 times. That's an incredible strike rate. Similarly, Newcastle, when they're away to the middle third, unders has last landed, I think it's 11 of the last 15. Another very, very high strike rate. You mentioned Zaha being out and perhaps the market reacting to it a bit more than they should because they're less reliant upon him this year. Why don't we hand over to a Palace fan? First of all, Are Palace less reliant on Zaha this year?
Well, I'll start off with saying this is my busiest game of the weekend. I'll be having a lot of bets in this. Are Palace less reliant on Zaha? They should be, but unfortunately, Roy Hodgson is the manager, so you can't trust them to be less reliant. There is no plan B. We saw that on Monday night. But if Zaha was playing, I probably wouldn't want to bet in this game. The fact he's not playing means I want to be back in Palace here.
Let me just explain to the listeners what Ash means there. So I think what Ash is saying is, because if Zaha was playing, Palace would be a less attractive price.
Yeah. So if Zaha was playing, Palace would be probably odds on to win this. It'd be about right. I wouldn't really want to be playing. The fact he's not playing makes me want to have a bet, because we have the players such as Eze and Townsend and Ayew, Batshuayi, who can do a job. Palace are better than Newcastle. Newcastle would finish bottom if West Brom weren't in the league. They don't shoot. They concede lots of shots. They've completely frauded points away at Tottenham, home to Everton, away at Wolves, away at West Ham on the opening day as well. So my play here, I agree with Pete, is Palace on the minus 0.25. But also I like playing some of the goal scorer markets here. So Patrick Van Aanholt is 16-1 first goal. He's on penalties, likely to be on free kicks as well. I think that's a play. But also the centre-back pairings. I don't know who's going to start out of Dan Cahill and Sakho, but Dan and Cahill are both 33-1 to score the first goal. I think that's a bet. Sakho, 66-1. Now, if you can get 66-1 where it's voided if he comes on after the first goal has been scored, I think that's a great bet as well. It's the sort of game which is going to be decided by set pieces, and Palace can score from set plays. Cahill, Dan, Sakho, they can get their heads on the ball. Palace have the players such as Eze, Townsend, who can deliver from set pieces. That's where I want to be. I'm really anti-Newcastle. I've backed them again today to go down at 4.5. So, back that. If you want something that's going to beat inflation, back Newcastle to finish in the bottom half at 1.06. They're just a bad side.
Every week, can we have an anti-post bet from you or a future where you quote about beating inflation?
That's because that's what it's about.
I think we're going to have a new segment. Cherry Analyst beat inflation. The first in this long-running sequence will be Newcastle at 4.4 to get relegated. And by the way, just for clarity, listeners, this sounds like a full house here on Crystal Palace minus a quarter. I don't want to go 3 points, but I'm happy with 2 points on this. You might have heard the sound of a keyboard tapping away while Ash was speaking, and that's because I've gone straight on Sky Bet and backed Palace's left back come left winger to score first at 16-1, and I've gone each way because they pay out as many goal scorers as you like on each way terms. I think that's a cracking bet. Pete, could you be tempted to back in Patrick Van Aanholt to score?
I did like the sound of it when he mentioned it, especially when he said about penalties as well. I like the sound of that.
So I think Kouyaté made a bit of a, I'm not going to say uncharacteristic because he's a midfielder converted defender, so you do expect those lapses of concentration, and that really cost you against Burnley. I'm very interested to see if he'll retain his place. Dan is surely starting. Is Sakho fully fit? Is he just a little bit out of favour now Dan's back?
I'm not really sure. I think the 2 games in 4 days makes me think Sakho's going to actually start here. And that's 66-1 for him to just score first. It's way too big. It's just out of line. He should be less than half that price. It's a tough one. Palace don't really know their best centre-back pairing at the moment. And it really just depends on who's the fittest on the Thursday training session. We didn't really get too many clues from Hodgson in his press conference earlier. So, you could wait till the team sheets, but whoever's playing at centre back with Koyate, I think you have to take a little punt on them to be scoring.
So Van Aanholt, are you sure he'll be on free kicks? Will Eze not be on free kicks? He scored one the other day.
He did score one the other day, but Van Aanholt was taking them long before Eze was at the club. I'd be confident Van Aanholt's on penalties. I'd be pretty confident on that one.
Because
that's where the value is.
There has been times when he's played a lot further forward. He's not going to on Friday because it's likely that Eze will be kind of on the left, but he will drift inside a bit and get on the ball, which will allow Van Aanholt to bomb forward on the assumption that, MacArthur's just going to sit in to allow Klein and Van Aanholt to really push forward there.
Well, you would think that Newcastle aren't going to attack, so I'm not really sure why Palace would sit back as such. I'd like to see the heat maps after the game and then analyse them. But I expect the likes of Van Aanholt and Eze to be very close to linking up on the edge of the Newcastle sort of 22, 25 yards out on that left-hand side and creating chances, popping off shots from that area, because Newcastle will be defending deep, and I don't even know what Newcastle's plan is. I think Callum Wilson's potentially out. Like I say, they're a bad side. They probably come back to bite me on the arse, but at the prices, I have to take Palace here.
So just to finish off on Van Aanholt, his expected goals, which measures the quality of a chance a player has, he hasn't had a lot of expected goals this year, but in terms of shots, he's got a few shots off, so he is shooting, maybe not always from the best position in the view of Opta analysts, which that's another discussion about whether they've got a good view of what an expected goal is. But total shots on target, 2 against Leeds, 1 against Fulham. He didn't get 1 against Brighton, but he did against Burnley. He did manage to have 2 off target in the most recent game. So he is getting shots off. He hasn't played every game because he's been injured, but he's had a good amount of shots this year. 7 in, I think, 4 or 5 games. So let's hope he can pull the trigger early doors. So let's move from Friday's game. A game that I wouldn't mind talking about would be Brighton-Liverpool on Saturday at 12:30. Pete, with Liverpool backed in a bit, now down to 1.68, and Brighton on the drift at 5.75, would you have a lean here?
Well, I say it on the podcast most weeks how I like Brighton. I think they're a good team. And I mean, especially I actually watched that Liverpool game against Atalanta. Liverpool were dreadful. They really, I haven't seen Liverpool offer absolutely nothing in a game for years. I'm pretty sure there is value on Brighton. It's one of those games. I'm not sure how to get involved with it, because if you back Brighton on a handicap, they're the sort of team who can lose by 2 or 3 against Liverpool, and if Liverpool are on it, they can put 2 or 3 past them. So at the moment, I'm sure. Well, I think there's probably value on Brighton. I just don't know whether I want to get involved, or if so, how to get involved.
Yeah, I think for me, there really is value on Brighton at 5.75. I might be having a quarter of a point on them, but a market I do like is both teams to score. It's only 1.7, but I do fancy Brighton to get a goal here. I think rather than playing both teams to score, I'd go both teams to score and over 2.5 goals, which is 1.95 with William Hill and Boyle Sports. Ash, I know you do like playing goals, and you've done so with quite a lot of success this season. Would you be a backer of the unders or the overs here?
Do you know what? It's a tough game, this one. I like the overs, but not enough to have a bet. The thing with Brighton is, out of all the teams that have played 9 games this season, no one's conceded less shots than them. And they've played Man United, they've played Chelsea, they've played Tottenham away. So Brighton Brighton don't concede shots. I can't really fault them for that. They've only conceded 26 shots on target, which somehow they've conceded 15 goals. I have no idea how they've managed to do that. But
Matt Ryan and Kepa are related.
Well, yeah. I don't think there's too much value here in the win odds or the Asian handicaps or goals, to be honest. The one place I did think there was a little bit of value was Mo Salah first goal at 4.5, so it's at 7-2. Now he's been really busy this season. He's getting off a ridiculous number of shots. And his non-penalty expected goals are 2.89, which on the face of it doesn't sound fantastic, but when you add in the fact he's on penalties as well, you can see him getting a penalty and scoring. So for me, the only bet I'm having in this game is Mo Salah first goal. If the numbers stack up, I'll back it a little bit each way. But my larger stake will just be towards him scoring the first goal.
Yeah, he did start quite strongly in terms of number of shots. He had 9 in his first game against Leeds and followed that up with 4 against Chelsea and 4 against Arsenal. So posting very respectable numbers. It has dropped off a bit in his last few games. His average this season is 4.25 shots per game. In terms of shots on target, he's averaging just under 2, 1.8. If he's going to have 2 shots on target, you kind of fancy him to score in the game. I guess because I think there's going to be goals in the game. I'm not sure about first goal scorer, but you have been very successful on that market. Is it just first goal scorer you're going, or are you playing the each way part?
For the purposes of the podcast, I think I should say I'm only going first goal scorer. Because I will be having more money on the first goal scorer aspect than I will be on the anytime place aspect. Just more because of market forces. But yeah, for me, let's put it down as 1 point Mo Salah first goal scorer at 4.5. I think that's probably about a point too big to a tick too big to be honest. I'm surprised he's not 3.5 first goal scorer.
Okay, Pete, what's your strongest bet on this week's card?
My strongest bet for the week is going to be Everton versus Leeds. I've got over 3 goals at 2.07 bet 365. Going for overs shouldn't surprise anyone who watched Fulham against Everton or even Leeds against Arsenal. Even though it was a 0-0 game, it was never a 0-0 game. And you just look at Leeds. If you get an early goal, they can get in these games. We've got a lot of goals. If they've conceded 3+ goals 4 times so far this season, and they've scored 3+ goals 3 times. Against Arsenal, they created chance after chance, just couldn't score. And Everton, unless I've got something wrong, they've conceded 2 goals or more in all but 2 games this season. Their defence is not looking good. They look like they changed the formation against Fulham, going to a sort of 3-4-3. Certainly didn't make their defence look any better. I think Digne's out, so we'll probably be getting Iwobi playing that sort of left wing-back role. And I just think this is the sort of game, it's going to be a good game to watch. I'm looking forward to it, and I think there could be quite a few goals here.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. I've actually backed both teams to score and overs at 1.87 with Bet365 using their bet builder. It's also available at Boyle Sports at 1.85. And I've also backed the over 3 Asian goals, where if there's exactly 3 goals, we get our money back. If there's more, we're paid out quite nicely at more than double our money, odds against here. I think Fulham's tactic of... Well, it wasn't even Fulham's tactic of pinning Everton back. Everton refused to... Their defence refused to push forward. I don't know if that's the goalie not pushing them up enough or the defence themselves. Michael Keane was their captain. I didn't see a lot of leadership there in him saying, do you know what? We're under the cosh, but we're under the cosh because we're defending inside our own box. And for Fulham not to get more than 1 goal in the second half was criminal from them. They completely dominated that second half. They deserved more from the game. It really was a game of 3/3. Because in the first half, Fulham started quite well, but then Everton were just utterly dominant once they turned up the tempo and turned on the style. They can definitely get goals going forward. I feel like this is going to be a great game to watch. Ash, have you got a thought on this game?
Yeah, you know what? So only Liverpool have had more shots than Leeds this season. Only Liverpool, Chelsea and Tottenham have had more shots on target. But then you look at Leeds defensively, and only Newcastle, Sheffield United and West Brom have conceded more shots than them. So you look at that and think, well, there's going to be shots popping off all over the place here. You fancy Leeds to score. I mean, Leeds have been desperately unlucky recently. You know, they dominated Wolves, got beat. They dominated Man City, drew. Dominated Leicester, somehow got beat by 4. Robbed against Parris, conceded 4. How they didn't beat Arsenal is insane. You'd think the rub of the green is going to come back. You know, like you say, Everton have conceded 2 goals in most of their games. You'd think Leeds can score 2 here, and you wouldn't be surprised with Everton not scoring. So both teams to score over 2.5 goals at odds against, or your bets over 3.0 Asian goals. Yeah, I can get on board with that. I think it should be an entertaining game, and that's I think goals is definitely the way to be going here.
Carl O'Sullivan tweeted both teams scoring over 2.5. Carl, as you can tell, we like the sound of that. He also wanted Liverpool and over 1.5 in the Brighton-Liverpool game. But as you can see, while Ash is reasonably keen on Liverpool, Pete and I are more keen on Brighton. So I don't think we'd be supporting your Liverpool and over 1.5 there necessarily, Carl. Carl's third suggestion, he's been busy on Twitter. We appreciate that. Thanks, Carl. Is Sheffield United +0. Sheffield United, draw no bet. Pete, I know from WhatsApp you're on board with this.
Yeah, it's something I looked at a number of times, and then I just kept getting Ash's thoughts of West Brom in my head. And I was like, yeah, let's pull the trigger on the Sheffield United here. Both teams not been looking good, but West Brom, I think every single game, they've just been completely dominated, really.
Apart from against Burnley. Against Burnley, were complete and utter dross against them.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But even with that, even in that game, I've still actually got Burnley with more expected goals than West Brom. But 26% expected goal ratio for West Brom, 30% shot on target. They're just not even... They're not really getting through anything. It looks like Livermore and Gibbs on the COVID list. Are they?
No, they've tested negative now, so they might be returning.
Oh, okay, so they might be back. But Sheffield United, I still feel that they haven't been good either. 30% expected goals, 34% shots on target ratio. But I do think they're a better team than West Brom. And just to get them as outsiders, odds against on the draw no bet, I think really low scoring game you would expect, just judging on the way the teams have played. So I feel like you've got to take Sheffield United here at this price.
So some stats that partly disagree and partly agree with you. You say that you expect a low-scoring game. When teams have been promoted and they're in the bottom 6, just over half of their games have gone overs. So, but I do understand what you're saying. Both teams are winless. I think they're the only 2 teams in the Football League structure that are winless, and they could be looking at a first win here, the away side, Sheffield United, I think. Even though they've lost 8 of the last 10, I do fancy them.
Well, this is the thing, yeah, because both teams have been struggling and they know this is a great chance to get the win. It's why I'm not actually backing the unders, because I feel like you'd like to think that they will open up a bit, maybe both teams, and go, well, this is our chance to get a win, and maybe it'll be a bit more attacking than normal.
I think the big problem with West Brom is they don't seem to have a lot going forward. They've got tricky players, but I'm just not sure they're going to get anywhere near enough goals this season. They've got 6 in 9 so far this season, which isn't the worst. I think Burnley and Sheffield United have both only got 4, but I think Sheffield United, they've got a bit more quality up top. McBurney and McGoldrick are both decent players. I mean, Billy Sharp's not good enough for this level and gets a game sometimes, but I hope I don't see him on the team sheet. Ash, you're looking in deep, deep scientific thought.
Yeah, so I'm just looking over some numbers. Obviously, I've made my thoughts clear on West Brom since before they got promoted. They're not good enough. Yeah, no, I like Sheffield United here, which is another reason why I'm backing Newcastle to get relegated again. It's sort of a related double as such. You know, if Newcastle get beaten, Sheffield United win, it's very much game on again. Yeah, I mean, I think Sheffield United win here. I just back against West Brom every week blindly. It's paying off so far. It will continue to pay off, you know, over the course of the season. They're not good enough to play at this level. Slaven Bilic isn't good enough. Their players aren't good enough. And they'll go down. They'll be in the Championship next season. Maybe they'll come back up. Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Scathing from Ash on the Baggies. I'd love to know if we've got any West Brom fans. Ash, you've offended the Scots, the Welsh, Newcastle, West Brom. The only people you were positive about was the Azerbaijanis. And I can't remember why, but you were very pro them. It must be your links with the Eurovision Song Contest. So I can't bring myself to put 3 points on Sheffield United here, Pete. Are you happy just going 2 points?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's a 2 point bet there. So we've got a few other games we want to cover. Arsenal Wolves is an interesting one. SimSimmer11 has tweeted in and said Wolves win. I'm all over this. 3-1 with Bet Victor you could get earlier today on a Wolves win. I actually make Wolves favourites. They've not had a good start to the season, but they're only 6 points off top. They're on 14 points from 9 games. They've won 4, drawn 2, lost 3. They're playing an Arsenal team that have won 4, drawn 1, lost 4. They're not looking fantastic, in my opinion, Arsenal. And against Leeds last week, they went down to 10 men, so you'd expect Leeds to have gone on and done the job. They couldn't get it done, but I think Arsenal they're at risk here on Saturday. Pete, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you talked about a new segment for Ash. I think we might have to get the weekly Arsenal. I feel I'm going to be backing against them a lot. I did it a couple of years ago with Man U under Mourinho, but Arsenal are just getting priced as a sort of top 6 team, which they aren't. They're a mid-table team. There's nothing that I can see to show me that they're particularly good. I think Wolves are a better team. This game, I think it can go either way. So the Wolves are big outsiders. I'm going to go. So far, I've gone for the double chance or the plus 0.5 on Wolves, but I like the win as well. I just think it could be a tight game. Both teams are probably more defensive than attacking. Arsenal at the moment just struggling to create chances. The makeup of the team isn't quite right up front. I think Pepe's going to be suspended. Willian might be out. Aubameyang played up front last game against Leeds, but it didn't really help him. I think he got 3 shots off, but it weren't in the best positions. And there's something just isn't quite right. And until they show they can sort of create chances or start getting priced a bit lower, I think I'm going to be against them a lot of the time.
I think with Cody back, that's a plus for Wolves. Ait Nori on the left-hand side, I'm still not completely sure about him yet, but he's definitely a threat going forward. He gets a few shots off at big prices. Jimenez is a great all-round striker for Wolves. He's really well supported by Neto and Podence. I think 3-1 is a crazy price, and I make that my biggest value of the week. Peter, more than happy for you to go on the plus 0.5. Maybe it's a point on each then for the benefit of the listeners, or just, Ash, maybe can you separate us here?
I mean, no, I think Wolves are the bet here. I was kind of hoping they'd drift to 1.92, 1.93, so I could back them plus 0.5. Like I say, Aubameyang playing up front's a positive. The negative is they have nothing creative in behind him. Arsenal is just a mess, to be honest. So the fans hounded Wenger out of the club. It's gone backwards since then. They've hounded Ozil out of the club. To the bench in favour of Gunnosaurus. It's gone backwards since then. Arsenal, they're a joke. I don't want to sound like Arsenal fan TV and, RIP to that Heavy D man. He seemed to be liked. But they are so bad. They create nothing. They fluke a few results. I mean, they're basically Wigan. They're like when Wigan won the FA Cup. They offer nothing. Watching them, they're just so bad. It's hard to believe how bad Arsenal have become.
Are you okay, Hunt?
Huh?
Are you okay?
No, I'm fine. But I can't believe how bad this Arsenal side have got. I mean, it is crazy to think that Wilfried Zaha apparently wanted to join them. I mean, they're more boring than watching Palace, and that's saying something. They're just so bad.
So Arsenal,
Wolves.
Arsenal go onto the very long list, getting bigger every week, of clubs, groups of people that Ash is upsetting. I think Wolves haven't really got going yet. I'm hoping that they increase their PBR. So we had a question from one of the listeners at Will Hill Woody was asking me to explain the PBR system a little. For those who followed us in 2016, it's basically a mix of, it's a version of expected goals. I don't use the stats that are out there. It's more based on how much of the ball you have in the final third versus how often you get a shot off, and then the contrary on your defensive side. And I've got Arsenal and Wolves rated quite similar this season on the PBR, but the fact that you're getting a crazy price on Wolves are the reason why we're going for them. Ash, is there anyone you want to talk about in a positive frame of mind? Is there a bet on a team that you like in this card?
I'm not going to say positive, but I backed Aston Villa against Arsenal. I backed them against Brighton, despite me not particularly wanting to back them, but I backed them. So I'll back them again away at West Ham. I don't particularly like Villa. I think it's a very small play, but you're getting plus a quarter at about 1.88, 1.87. I can see that. I think Antonio's still out for West Ham. That's a concern. But I think Villa are slightly better than West Ham. I think they'll finish a couple of places higher than them. And, lack of home advantage, that type of thing. I'm with Villa here. I think Grealish, I don't like him, but I think it's the kind of game after everything that's gone on in the press this week, he'll potentially turn up again. And I'll have a go on Villa plus a quarter at 1.88.
Yeah, my numbers came out as West Ham being a lay in this game, so a draw or Villa win. It'd be Villa's first draw of the season if this was to be a draw. They've won 5, lost 3. They haven't drawn one yet. West Ham have drawn a couple. They've won 4 and lost 3. Both teams are in arguably an artificial position, sitting on 14 and 15 points respectively at 7th and 8th in the table. If either of those teams finished there, their fans would be absolutely ecstatic, and for both clubs be one of their best seasons in a very long time. I think that.
Are you sure? I think West Ham fans would still complain.
West Ham fans. Okay, so you want to offend West Ham fans as well. Pete, would you be supportive of us putting a point on Villa? Is it plus a quarter you're going for, Ash?
Yeah, plus a quarter. Get a little bit back if it's a draw. I think that's the way I'm playing the game.
Pete?
Well, not really. It's I make the odds about right. I think without Barkley, I think in comes Hurahan maybe. I'm not sure I can be on Villa. It's one of those where I don't know. The price looks okay, but I just think looking at all the numbers I've looked at, I think the odds are about right. I just think West Ham are a bit. I think Villa are more sort of. You can get we can get really good performances from Villa and bad performances. West Ham, they're just looking quite solid. I'm not sure they're going to be turned over. So at the odds, I don't really have a feeling either way on this one, to be honest.
Yeah, on the PPR, they're both rated a 3, which is the 5th and 6th best in the league this year. But I think, look, Pete doesn't have a massive opinion either way. Ash and I do have a slight preference for Villa. So I think we're okay going a point on plus a quarter here. Pete, anything else you want to alert the listeners to?
I was looking at Burnley plus 2.25. I think we were talking about Burnley. I've been saying I think they're a bit better than they look. They got the 1-0 against Parris. And it's just, you look at Man City, I don't know whether they're about to go on a good run, but they haven't actually scored more than 1 goal in the last 6 games. Only in the first 2 games of the season did they score more than 1. And they're only averaging 1.4 expected goals per game. So to get a sort of plus 2.25 is always something that I would be looking at. Since then, I think we've found out that Pope looks like he's going to be out. I don't know how that affects them. And Burnley, I don't know if when they go to Man City, I mean, I remember the 5 or 6-0 they played last time. I'm not sure whether they feel that they can get the result against City. It's something that I'm sort of on the fence on. I wonder what everyone's thoughts are.
Not for me. I was hoping for a way of getting Man City on side in the head-to-head. I think there's been one decent Burnley result against Man City in the last kind of 10 to 15. I fancy Man City to put a few past them. They were better than the scoreline suggests against Olympiacos. And for me, that game carried on a trend of where Man City are starting to get into their flow a bit more. And I'd expect them to be able to put a few past Burnley. I do like the Burnley goalkeeper who's making his debut to get man of the match. If I can get something like 20-1 or higher, I wouldn't mind that, because I've seen him play a few times for Northern Ireland and he pulls off some absolutely outstanding saves. And I think that Burnley are going to be in the cosh for most of this game. I don't see any situation other than a complete dominance of possession and all the goal metrics by Manchester City. They could have Aguero playing in this game. They might have Jesus. I don't think it matters either way. De Bruyne is going to be back in. I think Man City looking great. Ferran Torres is looking fantastic. Sterling's a bit closer back to full fitness now. So I can't get on board with that one.
That's good. That'll save me putting the bet on, which I didn't really want to put on anyway.
Okay, before we move to listeners' questions, Ash, is there any other bets that you like this week?
No, I will just come back to that Man City one though. I mean, I do agree. They look like they're about to explode. They're not going to end the season scoring from 26% of their shots on target. They're probably a bet to win the league right now at 3.25. You look at their fixture run and you think they could properly explode here. They don't even need to explode. They just need to go and win games 1 or 2-0. I think Burnley plus 2.25 is potentially tempting, but not huge. Beyond that, it's not really a great card for betting. I mean, what's your views on Chelsea versus Tottenham here? I think I've got a slight edge towards Spurs, but I'm not confident.
Yes, so I make Tottenham a fair bit of value, but that's before today's game against Ludogorets in the Europa League's played. I had Tottenham as wanting to price them at around 2.9 and you can get 3.75 on them. Now, for me, that definitely represents value. However, this could be quite a tough game this evening. I don't know what starting lineup they're playing, so I want to leave the game alone. Pete, as a Chelsea fan, do you think the Blues' recent form is going to continue at home in the derby, which will be keenly contested at the weekend?
Well, it's one of those where if you just told me the prices, like you just said him, I'd have gone, oh, maybe a bit of value on Spurs. But when I've run it the way I look at it, it come out almost exactly right. And then you think about if enough Spurs players play today, that'll be 2 extra days of rest for Chelsea. Where are Spurs playing today? Are they at home or away?
Spurs are at home.
Okay, so maybe that's not too big a deal then. But yeah, I reckon the odds are probably about right. It's just one of those where who can finish the chances on the day, really.
I mean,
Nothing
priced
much.
at 1 to 12 on, it shouldn't be an arduous game for Spurs tonight. But I think there's a lot of bias in that pricing. Ludogorets are not a terrible side. They've caused a number of teams like Barcelona and Milan problems over the years in European fixtures. So I could see it being a bit of a nitty gritty game. So I'm leaving it alone, Ash, is the long answer to your question.
Yeah,
So
fair
maybe we'll
enough.
just move on to a few listeners' questions to finish off. AZK, who keeps coming to our poker matches on Monday and doing pretty well, has said both teams over one card in West Brom v Sheffield United. I'm guessing I'm the only one that's going to have an opinion on this, but interrupt me if you do. That has landed for both teams to get over one card, hasn't landed in any Sheffield United game this season, and only 2 of West Brom's. And if you look at the referee, Mike Dean, it's only landed in 2 of his 8 games that he's officiated. Mike Dean's average was around 4.5 cards a game last season. He's only hit 4 cards, I think, twice this season. So a 25% hit rate. I know it's a small sample size, but, or actually is it 8 games in already? I think since the resumption of football after COVID, whether it's because there isn't crowds, whether it's because people's mindsets are different, there just haven't been as many yellow cards. Perhaps also with players knowing that VAR is there, they can't get away with cheap fouls anymore, so there are less of those fouls. But it's not something I'd be backing at the price. I can't even remember what price AZK said it was, but it wasn't anything like 2 to 1. It was just a bit above, maybe a bit above 6 to 4. Ash, do you see that being a particular dirty game, West Brom v Sheffield United?
I'll be honest, I don't have an opinion, but didn't these two play each other 15 odd years ago when someone ended up with a fractured skull? That seems to ring a bell. Yeah, no, I mean, the only time I really play cards is when I'm looking at who's going to take their shirt off in a celebration and try and have a filthy bet building double on goal scorer and yellow card that way.
Oh shit! It's 11 to 5. I apologise, AZK. It's above 2 to 1. In that case, I would wait for starting lineups and look at the players that are playing. If there's lads playing that give away a lot of fouls per 90 minutes, then I'd be thinking about it. But I really would want to see the starting lineups and work out what the average foul count per for the 11 men on each team is to work out whether it's a goer. One that I hope you've got more of an opinion on, Ash, was the question we had from EFL Bets, which was, do you ever look at the Championship? Any idea where the value lies this weekend or season long, other than blindly backing unders, which is almost as good an ROI as backing your podcast bets? Well, thank you very much, Mr. EFL. Ash?
I mean, I do the Championship. I generally don't look. Well, I don't look at it until sort of Friday mornings. The market caps are smaller, so I tend to wait. In terms of season-long stuff, Middlesbrough and Blackburn are 2 teams right now who look like they're going to be. Well, I'm guaranteed they'll be in the top half, but they'll be knocking on doors of the playoffs. Blackburn have a lot of good young players coming through, and their shot counts are off the charts. So if you've got markets out there like a top scoring team in the Championship, I think Blackburn are a goer there. Brentford are struggling at the moment. I mean, Middlesbrough have only conceded 6 goals all season, and keeping clean sheets in the Championship is worth scoring 2 goals. Neil Warnock's a man who can get teams out of the Championship. I'd be confident Middlesbrough will be in the top 8. So yeah, they're the 2 I'm looking at longer term at the moment. Stoke are a side I was on pre-season. They're not doing it so much on the numbers at the moment, but they're getting results. And there's a definite trend right now of where we're seeing the league. People were making noise about Reading earlier in the season. it turned out they were rubbish. The numbers showed they were an absolute pony. And that's coming home to roost. There's 10 teams in the Championship fighting for 6 places. And like I say, 2 of them are definitely Middlesbrough and Blackburn.
Okay. Well, that was a very thorough answer indeed. I'm glad we had someone on the panel that could answer that. The next question is from Joseph. He sent us this privately, so he might not want his Twitter handle read out, especially if you look too much into the reasons for his question. He's intrigued to know a bit more about the work schedule of a pro punter and what it entails. Long hours, a lot of solitary work. You have to be very removed from emotion. And I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I really wouldn't, because, you know, a lot of people think that it's just betting on stuff, but you might research 10 games and come out with only one bet from those 10 games you've researched, which is demoralising. In what other industry, in what other line of work could you work a 10-hour shift and have almost nothing to show for it, and also have no chance of earning money from that because you've got no bets to make? And similarly, in what other world could you work 96 hours in 6 days and lose £4,000? It's not something I'd advise to anyone. Please bet recreationally, bet to your pocket, and have fun.
I had that exact same conversation today, and it's something people ask me all the time. Oh, so I went back to working in an office 6-7 weeks ago, looking at property. It's the same kind of thing. You look at numbers on spreadsheets. Apart from, I can actually get paid for it. Betting professionally is one of the most. I mean, I've done it several periods in my life. I haven't earned any money from non-betting in over 2 years now. It's the most boring thing you can do. I mean, you have no social interaction. It's not like, well, especially living in the Middle East as well, it is really quite boring. So, yeah, if you're good at it, great, but yeah, get a job and do it. Keep it recreational. You can make enough money for a holiday and your days out, but the day-to-day life of it being your only income, especially these days, it's not what it used to be. It used to be, you could go to a race track or a dog track and there was stuff to do there. Now it just seems, well, worse than just sitting in an office and pressing numbers on a keyboard. At least in the office, you get to talk to people and there's nice women walking around. You don't have nice women walking around your house, do you?
So Joseph might have a very nice woman walking around his house. We don't know. I think for Joseph, I keep having this question. I think I'm going to set up a Zoom and a video Zoom and just invite everyone to it that's kind of asked me this question before, to have a more detailed discussion on it. It really depends what you want to achieve and where you are in your life. If you've paid your mortgage off and you only need to make £1,000 or £2 every month, you can do that easily. But to make £5,000 and above a month is very difficult, because you can't get enough on in markets where you've got an edge. In markets where someone else has got an edge and you're just tailing them, the price goes almost immediately. In markets where the traders spend less of their time examining correct odds and looking at team news, you can barely get £5 on them after you've had a few winners. I had an account the other day that I lost 6 bets in a row, new account, and they still shut it down just because I was beating closing price. So yeah, keep it recreational, I'd say. Unless you're really serious about it, then let's chat on the Zoom. I didn't talk about my betting highlight earlier. I want to give a shout out to Matt, who does Greyhounds. If you go to Greyhounds STP on Twitter, that's at Greyhounds STP. He produced 3 winners from 4 last night at odds of 3-1, 7-2, and 7-2. The guy's unreal. He's over 200 points profit this year. If any of you bet recreationally and want to put 10 or 20 quid on a dog, I'd really recommend getting in touch with those guys. He's fantastic. Gents, we've covered a lot of games there. I think we're going to summarise the bets, put them in the spreadsheet for everyone to see. It sounds like we're going to be having a play on Sheffield United +0, on Wolves to win, or maybe plus 0.25 to cut the middle between me and Pete's leans there. We do like goals in Everton v Leeds. We're on the overs there. And we're quite supportive of Parris, and in particular, we're hoping for their left back, who's a lovely man to follow on Twitter. If you like following pro footballers, we're looking for him to score first.